businessman and chief executive officer of the first national real estate network. Right, during his tenure, the network has undergone an almost complete revolution of its products and service offering, developed industry-leading internet marketing technologies, dramatically altered its corporate culture, and returned to a position with great. He has 400 offices all over Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific. And the closest company is actually called Broome, which is top of Western Australia, the north of Western Australia. Himself, he's also sitting on the board for the Real Estate Institute of Australia. He was sitting as a director in year 2013, 2014, 2015, and he rejoined as a director of the REIA since 2019. Ray is also the former CEO of the USA-based AWG and also the Melbourne Football Club. And prior to that, he managed his own advertising agency and travel executive for Asia Pacific. Yeah, I think we are really with great honor to invite this great man to share with us the macro outlook of Australia. And then after that, we are open to the ground to ask questions. All right, so without further ado, I will hand this space to Ray, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And it's a pleasure and a privilege to be here to assist you and IEA and all your listeners through Facebook throughout Singapore and Asia. Singapore and Asia has a soft place in my heart. I've done business many years in most countries in Asia, from Japan to Singapore. And it was only this time last year, in May 2019, we held the first national convention in Singapore. We were there for a wonderful 5 days for all our agents from around Australia and New Zealand and the Pacific. We stayed at the beautiful Andaz Hotel in downtown Singapore and had our award ceremony at the Gardens and had a wonderful time during that occasion. Learned a lot about business, and I was indebted to my friend Jeffrey Fu, who did a wonderful job in not only highlighting the importance of real estate in Singapore to our delegates, but also assisted us on our awards evening with a wonderful performance. So thank you, Jeffrey. I look forward to be back in Singapore very quickly, even though it's only been 12 months. And of course, we have an hour and a half this evening. So I asked Sean what the main things he would like me to talk about. And first off, he mentioned I should be giving an overview of the Australian economy at the moment and the real estate market. So, like all economies throughout the world, we've been impacted by the coronavirus. And that's come to the forefront of every economy in the world, and predominantly in what our passion is, real estate. The figures of the stats of the rise of the illness and the unfortunate death rate, because one person is too many, and we can't be pleased with the result that we only just got over 100 people have passed away as a result of this, and our cases are low. But it's a credit to our federal and state governments and the action they took, that Australia, along with Singapore, is one of the few countries that have been affected as dramatic as other parts of the world. But obviously, in achieving that protection, we had to make dramatic changes to our economy. And I'm reluctant to use the word lockdown, but since the middle of March till the end of May, economic activity has been very subdued in Australia. The majority of businesses have been encouraged to work from home, but of course there's a major part of the economy that can't work from home. Ourselves, my national office, and half of our offices have worked from home. So the Australian economy has continued, but a very much a subdued performance. Of course, that's had an impact on employment. Unemployment is going to be close to 10% in this country, whereas only 3 months ago it was just under 4%. And for a country our size, 4% unemployment is virtually zero unemployment, because we've enjoyed strong economic conditions and strong economic growth for a minimum of the last 15 years. There's a phrase from the 60s that describes Australia, and that is the lucky country. And we certainly have been the lucky country in recent years. And we've been the lucky country in the way we've escaped the dramatic impact of the coronavirus on the health of our citizens. So our economy entered this current situation in a strong position, and we're still well resourced to come out in a stronger position when the effects start to wear off. But at the moment, there is large unemployment, as I said earlier. There's at least 30% of Australian businesses that aren't operating, and there are obvious ones like restaurants, cafes, air travel. There's virtually limited domestic travel in Australia at the moment. And of course, we shut our borders, the same as many countries did in middle of March. And so what is a popular destination for many people from Singapore to come to Australia, that's obviously been subdued to nil, and also with all other parts of Asia as well. And of course, we as Australians, we can't travel outside Australia. We also have a number of states that have their borders closed for not only international tourism and business, but for domestic tourism and business. The two largest states, Victoria and New South Wales, we still have our borders open. There is 1 or 2 flights a day from those cities, Sydney to Melbourne and vice versa, where normally there'd be anything up to 25, 30 flights a day. So business travel has virtually ceased. And only in the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks, there's been a relaxation in some states where you can actually travel throughout that state. Here in my home state of Victoria, the capital city of Melbourne, from next week, we're able to go to restaurants in small numbers, being at 10 or 20, and then hopefully in 3 weeks' time, 50. All major events have ceased, as in all countries. All our football codes and winter sports have been impacted. They haven't been conducted. The rugby league competition started this weekend, and the biggest sport in Australia, the Australian Football League competition, starts in 2 weeks. So what that means is the same as in the lives in Singapore and throughout the rest of Asia. What was our normal business routine ceased, but more importantly, what was our social routine, catching up with friends, restaurants, playing sport, physical activity, social activity, came to a sudden jolt. And this is my concern and many concerns, not just in Australia, throughout the world. As a society, we are social creatures. So how are we coping with this disruption to our social lives and the routine of our day-to-day business, family life and activities? So the effect of that is yet to be felt throughout the world. And I just hope and pray that we get back to some form of normality of visiting and being part of the social fabric of whatever city or community we live in. In our business in real estate, we've been fortunate. We've been able to transact real estate in Australia. So our sales figures are probably down about 30 to 40%. Our property management or our rentals for our landlord or tenants has actually remained strong throughout this period. And I'll come back to that later on when we ask specific questions. But at the moment, and it's the same throughout the world, but here in Australia, what began as a health crisis, and that was a legitimate health crisis. There was no concern, no issues about that. The actions had to be taken. We're now entering the phase where it's becoming an economic recovery crisis, if I may use that word, or an economic recovery issue of how every economy in every state in Australia, our national economy and the national economy of Singapore and all other countries starts to rebuild. It's a very delicate balance between the safety and health of our citizens, but also the equally as important issue of the financial well-being of our economy and the financial well-being of our citizens. All governments are grappling with that. And I think we're very fortunate in Australia, our federal government is grappling with that very well. There is no right or wrong answer in how to handle this situation. You can only make the best decisions available on the economic data, the health figures, the rate of infection, and the security of your citizens. And I have great faith in the Singapore government. What I read, they're making the right decisions. And I've had that faith reward in Australia that our government is making the right decisions. It's an overused phrase at the moment. These are unprecedented times. That's a given, that's an obvious. But what these times have showed us is the importance of leadership, the importance of clarity, the importance of compliance of our citizens to abide by the government's requests to see us through to the other side of economic activity, to making sure that our economies recover and the health of our societies recover. So the Australian economy entered this phase in very good condition. We are in a very sad condition at the moment, the same as all economies. Most Australians are itching to get back to full-time work. Most Australians are getting back to return to their business, because what's happening in all countries, there is now two forms of citizens. I'm talking about the economics now, not the health. There are those people that have a secure job. There are those people that have a secure career. There are those people that have a secure paycheck. And there are those people that don't. And the predominantly those ones that don't are small business, entrepreneurs that are dependent upon economic activity and dependent upon citizens being able to move freely around the city, freely around their country, and freely around the world. And the quicker we can get those businesses back to full-time work will lead our economy and all economies around the world. As I said earlier, there's no right or wrong decision. All governments grapple with this. And I'm indebted to the Australian government for the work they're doing so far and the strength of the Singaporean government at the same time. But both our countries have survived, if that's the right word. We now have to begin the transition of our economy back to normal. So that's the overall picture of the Australian economy, where we're at. And I'll now hand back to Sean for questions or any comments about what I just said, or we'll go to the Facebook questions as we go.
Thank you very much, Ray, for your awesome sharing. Yeah, indeed, I think